Hello everyone, welcome to YouTube live session for this very important topic. It is part 1 recalls 20 high yield must do questions. Yes, these are basically the recall based points because the concepts are repeated, right? Not always exactly the question is repeated, but mostly it is the concept which is repeated. Welcome to YouTube live session. So we are going to talk about those all important points here, and of course, 20 high yield questions. And I would certainly say that you can get 5, 6, 7, 8 questions from this particular collection. So be very attentive and participate actively. I will be looking forward for your answers in the chat box, and that's how we will go further. And we'll also talk about, like, when we say that we reduce your study time by 70%, how we make it easy for you. So we make it easy for you as we will go through. We will discuss about the mnemonics, the exam pointers, very clear keywords which give you the answers. So everything is fixed beforehand so that when you go to the exam, you don't have any chances. You don't leave anything on the chance. You are prepared with a proper system and then you move ahead with that. Right? So today we are going to talk about 20 high yield questions. So let's start. Now, in question number 1, a newborn presents with the ambiguous genitalia and salt wasting crisis within the first few weeks of life. Laboratory results shows hyponatremia, hyperkalemia, and low cortisol levels. Which enzyme deficiency is the most common cause of this presentation? So, what is happening here? So, basically, there is a salt wasting crisis and ambiguous genitalia. So what is here? This is a scenario of anybody would like to guess that? Certainly I would look for the answers in the chat box. Okay, so yes, great. You're absolutely correct. It is basically the congenital adrenal hyperplasia. This scenario is of congenital adrenal hyperplasia. What happens? There is an enzyme defect. Therefore, the formation of the mineralocorticoids and the glucocorticoids is less. Rather, all substrates are transformed into the androgens. So we get a lot of androgens, which leads to the ambiguous genitalia, while the mineralocorticoid and the glucocorticoid is low, particularly mineralocorticoid. Therefore, salt is wasted. So, salt wasting crisis is there. So, ambiguous genitalia and salt wasting crisis. Laboratory results will be hyponatremia, hyperkalemia, and cortisol levels. Now, which enzyme deficiency is the most common cause? This is a very, very, very important question, and it appears very many times in the exam. So yes, you all are correct. 21 beta hydroxylase. 21 beta hydroxylase is the most important cause. Right, so that accounts for 90 to 50% of the congenital adrenal hyperplasia cases, leading to decreased cortisol, increased ACTH, because the corticosteroids are less produced. So a negative feedback goes and it further increases the ACTH, and the excessive androgen production is there. Mutation of 21 hydroxylase CH involves which chromosome? That is another important exam point. So whenever we talk about any question, we talk about all the related exam points so that you just remember them, right? So you can just remember them and easily put them uh, in the uh, final answers. So that is very, very important. So knowing the pointers. Okay, so all the information regarding this is important. So mutation of 21 hydroxylase congenital adrenal hyperplasia involves which chromosome? This is a question. So that is the chromosome 6. And the gene is also asked in the exam. So CYP21A2 gene is there, and it is located on the short arm of chromosome. And this is one gene which is responsible for this particular syndrome. So that was about the syndrome, that is the congenital adrenal hyperplasia. Now coming to the second question. This is a very typical question, and I think this appeared, something like this appeared in the exam. and that was like maybe first time it has appeared, this particular terminology. So basically, yes, here in Ovira syndrome. So what is Ovira? That is basically the defects which is there in the genitourinary symptoms. So uterus didelphys is there, obstructed vagina is there, and simultaneously there is a renal agenesis. So here, by which embryological week do these structures develop? That's the important thing here. So by what embryological week do these structures develop? Yes, we are talking about the uterine development, we are talking about the vagina, we are talking about the renal agenesis. At what period these structures develop? Mhm. Yes, looking for the answers in the chat box. Yes, yes, yes. Be active. Start solving. That's it. So, yes, your answer is absolutely correct. 6 weeks is the correct answer. Now, because the Mullerian and the Wolffian, right, paramesonephric and the mesonephric ducts both begin differentiation and fusion around the 6 weeks of gestation. So, the correct answer is 6. Now, you can remember it as well. Week 6, Wolffian and women organs begin. The common origin explains why uterine and the renal abnormalities often coexist. And this is also sometimes known as the Hurlin-Werner-Woodelick syndrome. But of course, that's a tough name. No need to remember that. But a quick memory tip is W for weak, and it leads to defects in the Wolffian and the women organs all start together. So week 6, Wolffian and the women organs, they all start together. So that's there. Now coming to question number 3. This is another tricky question because it appeared from the guideline, right? So you need to have a basic knowledge of the guidelines. That is also very, very important. So 28-year-old woman at 30 weeks of gestation presents with uterine contractions. Her cervix is closed and the membranes are intact. You perform a fetal fibronectin test. According to NICE guidelines, what is the cutoff value for predicting preterm birth? Now, this is a substance which we detect for the preterm labor, which we use for the detection of the preterm labor. So, what is the cutoff for that, right? So, at 30 weeks, patient is coming with the uterine contractions. So, yes, very good. Please start answering. Yes, very good. So, yes, Dr. Swati, Dr. Nalini, very good. So, that is 50. 50 is the right cutoff. Perfect. 50 nanograms per ml is the right cutoff. So, very good. So, NICE considers that if it is more than 50 as positive and predictive of preterm labor within 7 to 14 days. So basically, what is fetal fibronectin? This is a glycoprotein at the choriodeciduals interface. So you can say it is a glue between the chorion and the uterus, the decidua part. Okay, so that's a kind of a glue there. So when this separation occurs at this place, that glue actually gets released as a chemical substance, and that is the substance which we measure. And the test is usually performed between 22 to 35 weeks and high negative predictive value. It rules out the preterm birth. Now, what is fetal fibronectin and why it matters? So, I already discussed that this is a kind of a glue-like substance between the placenta and the uterus. And as the separation occurs, that glue just comes out and we measure it. And if its levels are more, then we say that patient is at a risk of preterm birth. Which type of immune cells are the main targets of HIV infection? Which types of immune cells are the main targets of HIV infection? So, is it yes CD4? Is it CD8? It is macrophages, dendritic cells, or B lymphocytes? What do you say? Which one is the main target of HIV infection? Okay, yes, perfect. So it is CD4. HIV loves CD4, right? So if you remember the lines like this, mnemonics, then it is very, very easy. So HIV just loves CD4 cells. So CD4 cells are the one which is affected basically. Now, 22-year-old woman with regular menstrual cycles presents 2 weeks after her last menstrual period with suprapubic pain, fever, and nausea. So now what is happening, right? 2 weeks before patient had a period, right? Which nearly rules out any pregnancy event. Now comes the suprapubic pain, fever, nausea with leukocytosis, and CRP is raised too. So CRP raised, high blood WBC count, so goes in favor of infection. Now if we look at the options, in infection, the options are acute appendicitis, pelvic inflammatory disease, and urinary tract infection. Now out of these, your acute appendicitis, that is unilateral pain, right? Localized to that particular site where the appendix was. And secondly, there will be some bowel related symptoms as well. While in the UTI, there will be dysuria at least, so some urinary symptoms which are not there. So it is more likely to be pelvic inflammatory disease, right? Because pelvic inflammatory disease usually presents like this, and it's a bilateral pain, right? For exam point of view, you can always fix your uh, pain element for the pelvic inflammatory disease as a bilateral pain. So PID is the correct answer. So pelvic inflammatory disease, explanation is high CRP and WBC with pelvic pain and fever. Post-menses is classic for PID. Now coming to question number 6. Which drug is metabolized to 6-mercaptopurine in the body? So which drug is metabolized to 6-mercaptopurine in the body? So which drug? I think everybody knows that is azathioprine. Yes, this is a maintenance drug used for various autoimmune disorders, particularly the inflammatory bowel disease. So azathioprine is metabolized into 6-mercaptopurine, and which is basically, so azathioprine is the prodrug, and the exact drug, the one which has all the properties of the drug is the 6-mercaptopurine. Now, which plant alkaloid inhibits the microtubule formation during mitosis? Which plant alkaloid inhibits the microtubule formation during mitosis? Now, these all medications, their mechanism of action are very, very, very important, and they do come in exam. So please remember these points here. So now this is vincristine. Yes, perfect, perfect. Everybody is so perfect. I'm just looking at the right answers in the chat box. So perfect. So this is vincristine. Vinca alkaloids inhibit the microtubule polymerization, arresting cells in metaphase. Okay, coming to next very important topic, that is in fetal circulation, which structure diverts most blood from the pulmonary artery to the descending aorta? In fetal circulation, which structure diverts most blood from pulmonary artery to the descending aorta? So, what are the three connections? Three connections in the fetal state. So one is ductus arteriosus, another is ductus venosus, and the third is foramen ovale. These are the three connections, right? So which one is between the pulmonary artery and descending aorta? So yes, perfect. That's correct answer. So that is basically the ductus arteriosus is the link between the pulmonary artery and the descending aorta. I would also like to know what is the remnant. What is the remnant of ductus arteriosus? If anybody can answer in the chat box. Would like to see the answer of what does this gets transformed into? The ductus gets transformed into what when on birth of the baby? So that's what I'm looking for, the correct answer in the chat box. So meanwhile, this is a shunt blood, which blood shunts the blood from the pulmonary artery to the descending aorta by bypassing the fetal lungs. I'm still waiting for the answer of when after birth ductus arteriosus becomes ligamentous arteriosus. Yes, perfect. Yes, Dr. Swati, perfect. So that's the correct answer. And this is very important. All the three structures, right? Ductus venosus, what does it becomes? Ductus arteriosus, what does it becomes? What happens to foramen ovale? So they are very, very, very important questions. At what vertebrae does the superior mesenteric artery arise? At what vertebral level does the superior mesenteric artery arise? Yes, yes, yes. L1, L2, L3, L4, L5. Yes, you got it right. This is L1. So, this superior mesenteric artery arises from the abdominal aorta at L1 level, supplying the midgut, celiac trunk to this superior mesenteric artery, then inferior mesenteric artery. So, this is kind of a mnemonic you can remember as T12, L1, and L3. Okay, so here comes another tricky question. During laparoscopic removal of external iliac lymph nodes, loss of sensations over the femoral triangle occurs. Which nerve is injured? Now, be very careful about it, right? Laparoscopic removal of external iliac lymph nodes is done, and there is loss of sensation over the femoral triangle occurs. Which nerve is injured? So that is basically is it going to be the obturator? Is it going to be the femoral? Or it is genitofemoral femoral branch? So yes, B is the correct answer. Genitofemoral femoral branch is correct because see, if the femoral is being affected, then you will have a motor component also, right? So here there is no motor component, only sensory component. So therefore, genitofemoral branch of genitofemoral nerve is the correct answer. So what happens? The genitofemoral nerve arises from the L1, L2. It divides into two. Genital branch supplies the cremaster muscles and scrotum and labia majora. Femoral branch supplies the skin over the femoral triangle and upper anterior thigh. Now, what is the clinical relevance during surgery? Laparoscopic or open dissection of external iliac lymph nodes can stretch or injure the femoral branch, leading to loss of sensation over the femoral triangle. And the motor function of the thigh muscles remain intact. So this is very important. In this, how this differs from the femoral is, femoral will have the motor defect as well, but this does not have a motor defect. So femoral nerve injury leads to weakness of quadriceps, loss of patellar reflexes, anterior thigh sensation, and patient faces difficulty in climbing the stairs. Obturator nerve injury is the weakness of adductors, sensory loss on the medial thigh. Ilioinguinal and iliohypogastric, that has a sensory area in the suprapubic and the groin area. So this is something called geni and the femo. So geni moves skin and the femo moves muscle. So geni, when we say that it is affected, so sensory is affected. When we say only femoral is affected, then motor plus sensory, both are affected. Okay, all good till now? Fine, everybody okay with that? Okay. So which hormone is secreted by adipose tissue and it inhibits appetite and is linked to obesity with oligomenorrhea? So which hormone is responsible for all this? I think this is a multiple times asked question from the very old time. This question keeps on coming again. And yes, you are right. This is leptin, right? So leptin is the correct answer. So leptin suppresses the appetite via hypothalamic pathways. Resistance causes the obesity and the anovulation. Now coming to the next question. Again, typical RCOG question. They put in tricks, right? So you need to know the tricks. Which of the following correctly represents the sequence of monopolar electrocautery? So from where the current starts and from where it goes. Okay, so it starts from the generator. I think everybody agrees to that. Then through the active electrode went to the patient and then came back to the return electrode and the generator. So the B option, which mentions the same thing, can be the correct answer. Calcitonin is secreted by which gland? Oh my God, this is a multiple times repeated question, multiple times. So be very thorough about it. Calcitonin is secreted by which gland? So that is kind of that is thyroid cells, thyroid gland C cells are there, which is responsible for production of this. In Sheehan syndrome, which structure undergoes necrosis? What is Sheehan's? It is basically excessive hemorrhage leads to, or excessive blood loss leads to the problem in the anterior lobe of the pituitary. So basically, all the hormones produced by there is affected. Like if the prolactin is also affected, and which leads to loss of there is amenorrhea, and because of the amenorrhea, this becomes important, right? So it is anterior pituitary. Question number 15, the course of piriformis muscle. They are fond of asking such type of questions. They'll give you a picture. You have to identify what muscle it is and how it is, right? So course of the piriformis muscle. So where does it start and where does it goes? So it starts from the pelvic surface of the sacrum, then it goes on to the greater sciatic foramen and greater trochanter. So B option again comes out to be the best option. What are the answers and explanation? The pelvic surface of the sacrum, greater sciatic foramen and greater trochanter is very nicely visible. Which enzyme is responsible for transcription of DNA to RNA? Mind you, we are asking about, it starts from DNA and going to RNA. So what is there? So yes, so basically it is the RNA polymerase, because finally the RNA is being produced. We do not call it as a DNA polymerase, we call it as a RNA polymerase. When comparing suprapubic and supraumbilical incisions, which layer is not encountered in the suprapubic incision? So you have to compare the suprapubic and supraumbilical. So what is the difference? Which layer will not come here in the lower part? So I think everybody knows that's the posterior rectus sheath, which has its own implication, and she does not want to is not there. Once you open, you give the incision, you see that it does not exist there. Ovarian pain is typically referred to which dermatome? Yes, another important question. So ovarian pain is typically referred to which dermatome region? So everybody knows it is umbilical, that is T10. So ovaries are initially intra-abdominal organs, and their visceral pain is transmitted via the ovarian plexus to the T10 spinal segment. Hence, the pain from ovarian pathology, example torsion, cyst rupture, is typically referred to the periumbilical region. Okay, next question. How many carbon atoms are present in testosterone? Anybody? It's an open question. So how many carbon atoms are present in testosterone? You all can let me know. So yes, this is basically, we have to go with the C19. So testosterone is the 19 steroid derived from the C19 steroid derived from the cholesterol. And this is the last question for today. In adults, the distal portion of the umbilical artery persists as which structure? So what is the structure which is known as when we say that the distal portion of umbilical artery is there? So it is basically the median umbilical ligament, which is there, that forms the lower part of the that structure. So that's all. We finish here, and there's a Small embryology reminder, the proximal part of the umbilical artery remains patent, and as the superior vesical artery supplying the bladder, the distal part obliterates after birth to form the middle umbilicus umbilical ligament, seen as paired fibrous cords on the inner surface of anterior abdominal wall. So all this is very, very important to remember. If you are still not our student and looking to join and trying to gather information in 70% less study time, then you can just scan this QR code and take the admission. Or if you want to go for the trial first, then use this particular QR code, scan this and go ahead. That's all for today. Any questions? Any questions you can leave here in the chat box. Any questions? Okay. So I think everybody is good to go. So basically, yes, if you need any more details, you can just contact us on these numbers, website, and this is a website address, this is the email address, and this is the phone number. So it was nice connecting with all of you for this very, very, very important session. So that's it. So have a nice day and enjoy your day further, and we'll meet again in the next session. Okay, bye-bye.